Well, let's turn now to Washington and a new appointment by the Biden administration that is generating some controversy within the Jewish community. Sarah Margon has been picked as the Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor after having previously served as the Washington Office Director of Human Rights Watch, the organization which recently accused Israel of practicing apartheid against Palestinians and its own Arab citizens. That background and some other factors have led the Republican Jewish coalition to oppose her appointment, declaring, quote, Sarah Margon has made her career at some of the most virulent Israel-hating organizations around. For several years, she ran the Washington offices of HRW, a terribly misnamed, bitterly anti-Israel organization that issued a report just last week calling Israel an apartheid state. Well, in response, Haley Sofer, CEO of the Jewish Democratic Council of America, tweeted, I have worked with Sarah Margon for more than a decade. She is a national security expert, an unwavering defender of human rights. Smears alleging she supports BDS or Israel's destruction are patently false. She believes in democracy, as well as basic freedoms and dignity for all. Now, one of those who you could say is leading the charge against this appointment is Brooke Goldstein, executive director of the Lawfare Project and founder of EndJewHatred.com. And she speaks to us from our Tel Aviv studio. And Brooke, maybe fill us in on some of the details why you and others, of course, are opposing the appointment of Sarah Margon to this State Department post.
Thank you for having me. I think what's really important is to put this in context in the sense that this is not just a Jewish issue. This is not an issue about Israel or just the BDS movement. This is an appointment by the Biden administration of someone who has gone on record and said that U.S. anti-discrimination law that is there, civil rights law that is there to protect against discrimination against persons because of their national origin, their ethnicity, the color of their skin, their religion. This law should be violated. And how did she do that? She did that by tweeting support for the so-called BDS movement and specifically support for Airbnb to engage in unlawful commercial discrimination against Israelis and also against the Jewish people. So the appointment of this person as the her appointment, sorry, as a human, her actual appointment, she was appointed as the Assistant Secretary for Human Rights, is an abomination, and it is contrary to the actual position itself. So it's not a Jewish issue, it's a civil rights issue.
Right. Now, her appointment is being supported. We heard that comment from Haley Sofer and by groups like J Street, which you would expect would be supporting it. There are some other voices. Elliot Abrams, the former Assistant Secretary of State, and someone who certainly is regarded as a friend and defender of Israel and of conservative, let's say, causes. He put out a statement to the JTA saying, I am surprised by the claims that Sarah Margon was an anti-Israel activist, which was not my experience. We disagreed on many issues, but she was always sensible and open to argument. So what's your response to when Elliot Abrams comes out and defends her?
They're playing partisan politics in a very dangerous way. It's unfortunate that the so-called Jewish progressive left will show support for the rights of every other minority community except for their own. They'll support Black Lives Matter. They'll support the LGBTQ movement. They'll support the New Women's Movement. They'll tweet End Asian Hate. But when it comes to somebody who is appointed by the Biden administration, who has gone on record publicly, it's fact, it's not deniable, supporting unlawful discrimination against Israelis and Jews.
You're not saying Elliot Abrams is part of the progressive left, so she does have her defenders.
Apparently, he is part of the... Well, listen, if there was an ounce of intelligence in any of these people who were supporting her, they would say, we support her. However, we call on her to denounce any type of policy that is unlawful commercial discrimination against someone because of their race, ethnicity, or national origin. Would they support someone that said we should have restaurants that have signs that say no blacks allowed, or we should have universities or companies that say we don't do business with Chinese people or with Muslim people? people, they wouldn't. But they are supporting a woman who was appointed after she tweeted, "We should not do business with Israelis." That is a violation of U.S. anti-discrimination
law. I don't think
law.
that was her exact. It was about the Airbnb, which was specifically not doing business with
Israeli settlements.
Right,
she
with Israeli
said,
settlements.
Thank you to Airbnb for showing leadership by removing listings in Israeli settlements of so-called occupied West Bank
So
territory.
she didn't say Israeli, she said Israeli settlements, just to be clear.
So what? What she is saying is that we should not do business with Jews who choose to live in Judea. That a Jew living in Judea is illegal because of their religion, because of their national origin. That is nothing but racism through and through. To say that a Jew has no right to live in Judea, but a Muslim does, but a Christian does, is a racist policy.
Right. Now, what do you think the odds are that she won't get this appointment, given, of course, the fact that the Democrats hold the majority in the Senate in terms of confirmation?
You know, I don't like to predict the future, but all signs point to the fact that if it's not her, it will be somebody else equally as troublesome. If you look at the other Biden picks, look at Mahar Bitar. This is somebody who is now Biden's senior director for intelligence on the National Security Council, who was dancing in a keffiyeh in front of a banner reading, "Divest from Israel Apartheid." Hadi Amir said that said that she is inspired by the Palestinian Intifada. The Intifada was terrorist violence that killed innocent civilians. She said she herself was inspired by the Palestinian Intifada, and she is now he is now Biden's point man on the conflict between Israel and those terrorists who are bent on genocidal conflict with the Jewish state. So these are the type of people that Biden is appointing and picking as cabinet members and to represent the U.S. government, which I find incredibly shameful and disgusting.
All right. Brooke Goldstein, Executive Director of the Lawfare Project, thanks for joining us.